This exhibition, respecting our chosen key dates of 1915 and 1965, referenced two important exhibitions: the 1915 International Expo held in San Francisco, and the Responsive Eye exhibition held at MoMA in 1965 in New York. In 1915, American audiences were able to look at French couture, often for the first time, shown in the French Pavilion at the Expo. Distance that was so key in the first exhibition in terms of distance travelled. In the second exhibition of 1965, it's about distancing oneself from the object or finding an ideal perspective from which to look at an object. The fashion project here in Miami is about learning to look at objects in different ways. The Past, which is the title of this exhibition, is about looking at different ideas about the past and how it's absorbed into fashion.
I'm completely fascinated by dress as a media for exploring multiple narratives. The style of dress I have here is known as a lingerie dress, and it was incredibly fashionable from the 1890s to the 1910s. And they were called lingerie dresses because they were made from broderie anglais, which is a material which was much used for women's undergarments at the same time. And broderie anglais was thus called because it was so incredibly popular in Britain. And we can identify broderie anglais by very particular techniques, most notably the perforations, the cutwork, which is meticulously hand-stitched with buttonhole stitch, by the vertical rows of parallel pin tucks, inserts of lace, and white-on-white embroidery. And so the lingerie dress is simultaneously plain, but it's also incredibly decorative. In a museum, some garments come with very, very detailed histories, and sometimes they come without any provenance whatsoever. This garment has a brief provenance. We know, for instance, that it was donated by a Miss Lee and that she gave the date of 1910. In the past, garments were incredibly precious and they were worn again and again. So just because a dress was perhaps designed or made in 1910, 1911 or 12 doesn't mean to say that it wasn't also worn in 1915.
The past is celebrated within this exhibition and celebrated at a number of different levels. Of course, fashion is like an archive itself, and so we're looking for enduring motifs and how they're recontextualized within the garment itself.
As I looked through the exhibits and through exhibits in the museum from a similar period, I became incredibly aware of the daisy motif and how it was used in broderie anglais. Here we have a very elaborate, possibly even a sunflower, and it's evidenced in the perforated cutwork and also on the white-on-white embroidery. And then when we move through to the 1960s, we see the daisy represented in a completely different way. It forms, for instance, Mary Quant's logo, and we even see it appearing on a psychedelic paper dress.
We're looking for what the 2 years might have in common, and you only have to look at the bob, for example, to look at how the idea of androgyny was explored at two such distinct periods. Both periods celebrate the teen years and what to do with that period between childhood and adulthood. The college where both Amy de la Haye and I are based has a huge archive of images of the original fashion courses. They were intended, of course, to prepare young women for working in the industry, but this exhibition looks again at the skills being developed, wig making, for example. Art draws attention to the trickery of fashion and confuses distance. Shapes change depending on how one looks at them and from which position. The past is both over and continuous, rejected and incorporated. When quoted, of course, the past becomes nostalgic and sometimes a fantasy.